The Dutch police, Salesforce, CarGurus, Adidas, Canada Goose, and a whole lot more. Welcome to Breaches of the Week. I'm Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic, and let's dive in. Now, this week on Breaches of the Week is actually somewhat different. I've decided to change the format up a little bit, and I'm looking for feedback. So if you are a regular watcher or listener or follower or long-term, I'd love to basically get your feedback on this, especially if you've been watching or listening to Breaches of the Week for quite some time now. And so with that, let's dive into the new format, which, quite frankly, I think is still comprehensive, but a little quicker. And we're going to start in the Netherlands with the Dutch police. They have a documented mishandling incident here, and confidential files were mistakenly sent to an individual. And so they are treating this as a data breach and moving to recover those files. And all we know is sensitive and investigative case files or confidential documents were caught up in this. So best of luck, Dutch police. Moving on. We're heading down under to VIQ Solutions. Now, apparently court transcript data was accessed or handled by an entity based in India as part of a supply chain hit. Now, concerns obviously were raised internally prior to the actual disclosure of this, and apparently highly sensitive court transcript data was exposed. So best of luck, VIQ Solutions and the Australian legal system. Moving on, let's head to the United States and talk about Terra Holdings LLC. Now, there's public reporting on them that basically says they are undergoing a data breach investigation, but we don't have much details. But all we know is sensitive personal information has been referenced, and quite frankly, we'll see what happens there. So best of luck, Terra Holdings. Moving on. Keeping in the United States, Emmanuel Medical Center. Apparently sensitive information was also taken from them. We don't know how just yet, so best of luck, Emmanuel Medical Center. Moving on. In the U.S., Alpine Lumber Company, they are investigating a data breach according to their posting on this. They did not specify a method of entry, and again, sensitive personal information, but, here we are. Moving on, in the United States, Triad Radiology Associates. Now, the method of the way the attackers got in is not specified, and we don't know much more than that right now, but heads up, Triad Radiology Associates. Moving on, A Smart Restaurant Supply, again, in the United States, and most of these will be in the United States. Now, we have limited technical details on this one. They said private data was compromised, but they didn't itemize it, so we don't necessarily know just yet, but heads up if you order restaurant supplies from them for your restaurant. Moving on, Figure Technology Solutions, also U.S., they've reported a cybersecurity incident that is impacting customers, according to their press release. And all we know is personal information was caught up in this, but again, don't know much more than that. Moving on, Academic Urology and Urogynecology of Arizona, they reported a cybersecurity incident impacting their patients, and they did say that personal information and health information was caught up in this, and best of luck. Moving on, Alta Med Health Services, also in the United States, they reported a cybersecurity incident affecting both patients and employees. Personal information, including employee-specific information, was taken from Alta Med Health Services. Moving on, TAK or TAC Broadband in the United States, not sure where they are though, they also reported an incident and said that personal information was stolen as well. Best of luck. Moving on, WIRX Pharmacy in the U.S., and they reporting a cybersecurity incident. We don't know much more than that, beyond personal information was taken. A lot of these just simply aren't listing it out. When I've got those lists, I will give it to you. I'm not shortchanging that, and I never will. Moving on, Sempa County Care, United States. Law firm basically is reporting on this breach, and I do see a lot of law firms say, hey, we're investigating this. Why don't you contact us if you're a patient? Because they're moving to build class action lawsuits. Personal information plus PHI, essentially, or personal health information was taken from Sempa Community Care. Moving on, Rydell Law Group here in the United States, basically they are reporting that both personal information and personal health information were stolen as well. well. Choice Hotels International, multiple law firms on this one because given their size, basically are requesting any kind of information that you may have if you're a patron or an employee. And apparently this data breach occurred in January of 2026 and personal information was taken as well. CarGurus, the online car auction or I believe purchasing website, I think they do both. Anyway, Shiny Hunters is now claiming that they've stolen roughly 1.7 million records, and they've posted it to their leak site. CarGurus described this as a purported data breach in their own reporting, and corporate records, according to the threat actor Shiny Hunters, were taken, but we do not know exactly what those corporate records are. So if it gets dumped, I might have an update for you. Moving on. Open Loop in the United States. Health data at a very large scale apparently was essentially taken, but again, not reporting necessarily what that is. So best of luck if you use Open Loop, which probably is a third-party provider as opposed to like a hospital. And now for our new segment, basically entitled The Breach Monitor. And this is actually something that I had been thinking about for quite some time. These are items reported basically during the past week or so because it's just week to week, and these are all over the world, and these are typically dark web sourced, right? So these are reports and alleged incidents compiled from essentially breach and leak monitoring platforms, not to mention the fact that, part of my day job is in the dark web looking for these things as well. And so I'm listing them separately here because of both severity and verification, right? This is a weaker verification than notice of filing. So to be, notice or filing on this. So to be very clear, these are alleged. In other words, the threat actor says, hey, we breached you. Here's, you're on our leak site, et cetera, et cetera. So these are items to watch and be on alert for, and hopefully none of these come to fruition. Now, to be very clear too, we've seen false positives in the dark web where, the Shiny Hunters or whatever the group says, oh yes, we've breached Acme Co. And there's like 5 Acme Co's. And so which one is it? That kind of thing. Or they got the name of the company wrong. In other words, they breached a company and then called out the wrong company with another company's data. So I want to be very clear on this. And so for that, we're going to head over to Indonesia to start with this with Kemen Turian Kesi Hatan, RI. I don't know what that is, but apparently that basically is involving the breach of a server API. And essentially, dark web threat actors are claiming roughly 63,300 records exposed, including names, email, dates of birth, and gender. Also, basically medical and student information as well. So best of luck to you in Indonesia. Moving on, let's go to Israel and talk about Authentic Israel. That's apparently the organization name. That's an alleged breach as well, claiming 382,289 customers, names, email, phone numbers, dates of birth, and medical information as well. Moving on, Laser Car Services in Bahrain. So apparently they had a breach, and that's all we know at the moment. Voney, Voney in India apparently also has a breach as well. Again, we're watching that one, but there's not much more I can say about it at the moment. Montalavo Peruvian Institute in Peru also has an alleged breach. Also, Information System Experts, I don't know where they are, sounds American, but could be Canadian or Australian or any other English-speaking country. They have alleged breach. Farm Sponsor also has an alleged breach as well. Crumble Pop, which sounds like a pretty good dessert place, I'm guessing, cookies or something like that. Anyway, alleged breach there. Citran in Brazil, Sitran, and all of that. UX also has an alleged breach. And the Pengad Ilan Agma Statbot or Satabot. I'm sorry, I am mispronouncing that. I know I am. This is basically an Indonesian government domain, and they also are caught up in the dark web with an alleged breach. And again, those were all alleged. Hopefully none of them come to fruition, but I'll keep you up to date on a lot of these as I think this was an interesting and kind of important news segment to go through. And you tell me, if you hate this, I'll possibly rethink it. And our next news segment essentially is Hoser of the Week. in honor of basically the worst breach in Canada this week. Because quite frankly, I've got a lot of Canadian followers and whatnot. I also happen to be Canadian American. So hoser of the week goes to Canada Goose, the maker of the warmest coats you will ever have in your life. They are actually incredibly well made. But this breach was reported on February 15th of this year, and apparently this happened in August of last year, and this is claimed by Shiny Hunters via a third-party payment processor. That's right, Canada Goose got hit through their supply chain. So Shiny Hunters claims to have acquired over 600,000 Canada Goose customer records, personal information, e-commerce order details, and partial payment card information. Canada Goose, and the reason why they are the hoser of the week is basically one, better supply chain due diligence. Come on, guys. But two, basically they are a very visible Canadian brand across the entire world. If you live in a colder climate, Canada Goose basically is one of the go-to jackets. You go on an Arctic expedition, you go to Canada Goose. That's how good their jackets are. So best of luck, you hoser, and hopefully you'll get it cleaned up. And with that, we're going to go on to our another news segment. I've usually mixed these in before, but I've consolidated this into a new segment, simply ongoing supply chain breaches. I talk about these things all the time and I scatter them through, and I was just going to get them done in one shot. Again, I'd love feedback. But with that, let's start with Salesforce. This is that ongoing data breach from last year. And once again, we have yet another disclosure. And in this case, it's North Star Fertility Partners in the United States. Now, another supply chain breach that has basically been making the rounds in the last, I would say, month or so is TriZetto TPS. And everybody is starting to declare now as a result of TriZetto. Utah Valley Pediatrics, San Francisco Community Health Center, which I reported on earlier, and now they're basically saying it is TriZetto, Valley Family Healthcare, Pafford Medical Services / Pafford EMS, and South Boston Community Health Center. So best of luck to Bostonians on the south side. But those were essentially your supply chain breaches. And finally, we're going to do our finally segment as normal. We are going to be talking about Adidas, the global brand, the massive shoemaker. They got hit. Now, the company stated that there is no indication its IT infrastructure, e-commerce platforms, or customer data were impacted by this incident. Apparently, an individual claiming to belong to the Lapsus Group posted on breach forums alleging that they had compromised Adidas's extranet. Now, the stolen data set is described as containing 815,000 rows of information, including names, email addresses, passwords, birthday, company names, and technical data as well. Lapsus, for the record, is part of the hacker collective known as Scattered Lapsus Hunters, which is Scattered Spider, Lapsus, and Shiny Hunters combined. And basically, I think they had the triad of evil or whatever they were calling themselves. You know, these guys are jerks, but they really know how to name themselves. It's actually really impressive. I should do a segment on that. Anyway, this group specializes in social engineering attacks, and if confirmed, Adidas would be the latest organization linked to this group's activity in recent years. This is not the first time Adidas has experienced a cybersecurity incident. In May of last year, they notified customers that some of their data had been stolen after an unauthorized individual gained access to their systems or a third-party system. And so here we are. And so those were your breaches of the week. I'd love to basically get some info or feedback on the way I laid all of this out. I think it's a little quicker. We covered, for the record, 34 breaches here, and we did it in under 15 minutes, which is kind of a record without, actually, I think, shortchanging anything. So with that, let me know. But those were your breaches of the week. Were you impacted? Let me know too. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please, 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 I don't want to say private, informed, and secure. Take care.